This is Ryan Hellquist, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Ryan is an actor. He's been on the show several times. We're also Benicia boys. What up, Benicia? Yeah. Panthers. Panther high school football rules. But we're not here to talk about Benicia too much. We might get sidetracked for a minute or two here. But I wanted to take a moment because you're an actor, because you've worked on films with firearms. I thought we could have a very relevant and timely conversation about firearm safety, movies, and look, I was around when Brandon Lee died, and we were all shocked. You know, like, oh my God, how does this happen? How does someone get killed? And then the industry said, hey, we're going to get our hands around this. I mean, Hollywood's used guns for decades, and there's been thousands of films with them and firearms and shooting. And it's very rare that this happens. But this, on the set of Rush, Alec Baldwin and everybody else involved with this, Ryan, this seems like, from my point of view as a military guy that's handled weapons a lot, it seems like a completely preventable thing. So what are your thoughts in general?
Thoughts in general is the same thing, as that it is absolutely preventable. And, obviously what happened on the set of Rust was tragic and, shouldn't have happened, should have never happened. And there's protocols in place for those things. We can talk about that, going forward, but yeah, there's lots of safety measures to prevent that.
Yeah. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. By the way, my brother passed away just almost 2 weeks ago. We're raising money for his family via a GoFundMe. So if you're inclined to help, we always take love and prayers and support and all that stuff. And if you want to do a little bit more, the biggest help that I need to help get the family transition from an alive brother to a dead dad is through GoFundMe. And just, if you can help, that's a big help, and I appreciate it. Okay, let's get back to this. Okay, so my thoughts, basically, as a military guy, I've handled a lot of weapons, and we have a thing. We clear our weapons when we go outside of the building because, maybe you had rounds in your weapon, and maybe you're outside the camp and during, in a hostile area. And so you want to make sure that you're not bringing live rounds in a chamber that can actually accidentally kill someone. And so we have clearing barrels. And if you shoot a round into a clearing barrel, that's called a negligent discharge, right? It's not accident. It's not oopsie, that kind of thing. It's like you failed to follow safety protocols, and now there's going to be a penalty for that. I mean, and up to including what they call there's a non-judicial punishment, and then there's a thing called the UCMJ. It's our code of justice in the military. But you can get hit for 2 months of pay, rank, all kinds of things can be taken from you if you do these things, because we consider it negligent.
Yeah. And that seems to be what happened on the set of Rust, was negligence. I mean, they're still doing their investigations, so there's no official wording. And again, I wasn't on the set, but just based on the evidence that's been collected so far, and based on what, just the situation, you can look at it and see, okay, clearly there were protocols that were not followed. And yeah.
So in the movie world, there are indie films that fly pretty loose, and you guys do guerrilla thing. I know you make indie movies, and there's guerrilla shooting with no permits and all this kind of stuff. And this is a reality of that part of the industry, right? Like, you don't want to be crippled by having to spend $10,000 on something that you're like, Hollywood is full of stories of saying, yeah, we'll get the permit on Monday. We're just going to shoot the scene on Friday. And never So that there's fast and loose with the rules, but how does it work on an indie set when you guys you're not looked over by the union and other people?
Right. Good question. Yeah. So obviously with an indie set, the unions of any set that's for a union set are there to protect people. That's what the unions are there for. They're there to protect all different aspects of the crew and the cast, depending on which union is there to protect that. And so with an indie set, there's no union oversight. So you have to you have to be better protected for yourself. You have to look out even more so for yourself and the people that are with you on that crew. And in terms of the indie films that I've worked on, where there isn't, a union oversight or a union rep on the set, we look at, well, what do the union reps do? What do the professionals do in terms of safety? Because obviously, we're trying to cut corners here on cost so that we can functionally perform and do whatever film that we're making, but we're not wanting to cut corners on safety. That is never, the issue. So you're always looking at, well, what do the professionals do? What are the protocols? And let's do those same practices to the best of our abilities.
Okay, and then in terms of cutting costs and everything else, the union is also looking at a variety of things, and then there's subordinate organizations that may be on a set as well, looking for the care of animals. You know, are they being harmed in the shooting? I mean, there's all kinds of people with their eyes on this stuff. And one of the things that came out from Rust was that some of the accommodations weren't up to union standard, and so people were having to drive long distances and everything else. And these things might seem inconsequential, but again, you're on a movie, a professional place, you're working hard, and movie folks work hard. I mean, you might sit around for hours and hours if you're not the one working, but you are going to be there for, I mean, however long the day is, right?
12 hours standard, you know?
Yeah. So when you are going to be handling a gun and you're the armorer, you know, you've got, I mean, you need to have had your sleep. You can't be awake for 10 days in a row, you know?
Yeah. And that's another one of those, like you were talking about the safety protocols of, you know, having to drive long hours or talk about turnaround time, you know, being able to get enough rest in between the next day. All those are in place to keep people fresh, keep people sharp, keep their attention and awareness present on set for the task at hand, especially when it comes to safety protocols. Absolutely.
You've held weapons in movies. You've been handed a weapon. And let's just keep it on the indie side. What does that look like in the indie world when someone hands you a weapon and you're going to now handle this thing?
Yeah. So I guess on the indie side, and again, we try to follow as best the same protocols as a professional set would do. But I myself as an actor, I'm wanting to be as familiar with as possible with anything that I'm handed, you know, especially a weapon, whether that's a knife, a gun, a sword, you know. And so I want to be familiar with that. I want to know how it functions, what it can do, what it can't do, and how maybe, you know, can I fuck this up? You know, how can I fuck this up? Tell me how to not fuck this up, you know, and then get that expertise and information from wherever that prop or that weapon is coming from. And, you know, in terms of protocols, there's a very clear protocol in terms of, you know, if you're on a professional set with an armorer, they're the ones responsible for the safety of the weapons and making sure that there is no live rounds in them. Now, I mean, we can go through the really detailed overhaul of all this. And basically, there's multiple types of weapons that you would use on set. And first of all, any object that an actor uses on set is called a prop. So there's kind of a misnomer that a prop gun is not a functional weapon. That's not the case. A prop gun can be a real, you know, live weapon, a functional weapon. Now, the safest option is having a replica or a rubber gun or some sort of replica weapon that is not functionally fireable, right? So that's one option, and that's been used on sets. Now, you still want to treat that as a real weapon, and we can get into that later, and why the reasons why you would still treat it, you know, with some level of respect and reality. The next level up is something like I've seen a lot of the indie sets, you know, Nerf guns that have been painted over to look like a real gun. Now, a Nerf gun's not going to hurt you, but a Nerf gun at point blank with a Nerf bullet will, you know, hurt you a little bit. You know, put your eye out. Exactly. So, you know, you want to be, again, treat these things with respect. Or airsoft. Now, that's even more dangerous, right? Because that can actually really do some real damage. And I've seen airsoft guns being used as prop guns on set, painted over. And again, you want to treat those with respect and reality, and you want to check that there's no ammo inside them. And then you have real firearms, real weapons that can either be completely empty, or they'll have dummy rounds or safety rounds in there that are specifically to kind of help the gun chamber correctly. And so you can have all of the action of the gun, but you have a bullet inside there that does not fire, does not have a projectile, has no powder, so it cannot explode. But you can clearly see the difference between, you know, that and a live round. Another
Let,
thing that is used
let,
often on,
let's
sorry.
slow down right here and let's talk
Yeah.
real quick about what these things are, because in the military we use dummy rounds as well. We call them blanks,
Okay.
and it's clearly like it's a regular bullet up to the point where the end is crimped. Right, and I'm using my fingers
Mhm.
because it looks like someone smooshes it like that, and all that does is it puts out enough gas to operate the weapon, and because the weapon operates on gas, right? So you have to have some gas come through to push the piston back so it takes off another round, and so you can simulate the feel of a weapon, good enough that you don't even really realize it. But you
Mhm.
also, I load it myself. I know every one of these rounds is a blank round. I have what's called a blank adapter on the end of the weapon so that it can't, the gas is held in like it's supposed to.
Mm.
But you can see it as a blank round. The live round thing, I mean, a live round is anything that looks like a real bullet, I would imagine. Is
Right.
there the dummy rounds that function? Are they indicated by a color or some other kind of thing?
Yeah, so the ones that I've used have a very specific color. The ones I've seen bright red, bright blue, and they're clearly visually different than a live round. And just to be clear, the thing that I was talking about earlier with the dummy rounds is a little different than a blank round. So,
Okay.
like you were saying, a blank round is crimped at the end, does not project, but can explode. So you get, you see the action of the flash, the muzzle flash. You see maybe some side barrel flash. You see the shell project out of the chamber, and that's aesthetically pleasing for film. And that's why a lot of times blanks and real weapons that can fire blanks are used on set, and there's safety protocols that go with that because blanks are still dangerous, and they're still can be harmful within a close proximity. Now, the thing I was talking about earlier is even safer than that is a round that looks like the shape of a live round,
Mm.
but is clearly brightly colored, different than what a live round would look like, and it's usually rubber, so that even if when the hammer hits it, it can't go anywhere. It will not project, and there's no gunpowder in there. There's no gas. It will not explode in any way.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm going to back up. So
Sure.
you've also been on union sets and you have an armorer. Um, if you're an actor, I mean, look, is it your responsibility? I know you've got an armorer there, but I also
Yeah.
know that basics gun safety, right, which should trump everything else, is if you grab a weapon, you need to
Mhm.
clear it. You need to know what's in the barrel, right? You're not say clearing, because clearing would indicate that there's nothing in it. So in this case, you need to understand, like, I expect to see, and I would even go this far. If you were to if you and I were to exchange a weapon, I would say to you, this weapon is clear, or this weapon has a magazine with 10 rounds. They are all blanks in it.
Mhm.
And then if I was to hand it to you, what would you do? If I'm the armor, that's my job, is to set these weapons up. Do you trust that? Or do you go, hey, thanks, man, I appreciate it. And then do you go and recheck it?
I, as an actor who has handled weapons on set, will always check, and I always want to. I'm not an expert. I'm not an armorer. I'm not an expert weapons handler of any kind, but I am an actor who has handled real weapons on set. And if an armorer hands me a weapon, first of all, a professional armorer is going to show the actor that what kind of ammunition. If you're using blanks, they're going to show you. They're going to explain the dangers and what that gun will do with a blank. And there's going to be a whole safety meeting ahead of time before that explains everything. Now, if it's a completely cold weapon, there's no ammo in it, or there's one of like the rounds that I was talking about that are not blanks and are not live ammo, but they're just there for chambering, you will be explained that to you by the armor and shown visually by the armor, and then it is handed to the actor. Now, so I would watch that, and if an armor handed me a weapon and didn't show that to me, I would say, hey, before you hand me that, can you show me that the chamber's clear, show me that the cartridge is clear, like, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
checks and balances, right? So the protocol is the armorer is the one who handles all the weapons. They go to, if a weapon is called for on set, let's say we're shooting a scene, first of all, that day, the first AD, the first assistant director, they're really, a lot of people don't realize the first AD is the one who's really running the set. And they are also in charge of the safety of the set, the overall safety of the set. So, and I've been a first AD as well. So when that happens, if we're using weapons on set, we're going to have a safety meeting that morning before anything happens, and we're going to discuss what kind of weapons we're using, what kind of ammo is being involved, so that everybody is aware and everybody knows what's going on. And that's also peace of mind. If you're using a weapon that is completely without ammo, right? That's never going to discharge. It's never going to, not even a blank, right? You still want to explain that to people so they have the peace of mind that they're safe. Where was I? So the armorer will take the weapon to the first AD and show them, hey, this is a cold gun or whatever. Show them that there's no ammo in it, or if it's blanks, show them that it's blanks. Explain it. The first AD then, after visually inspecting that and seeing that, announces to the entire crew, hey, there's a cold weapon on set. This is the situation. And if anybody else would like to inspect this, now's the time. And that's really for anybody, because then if I'm an actor standing next to the actor with the gun, yeah, I want to go back. I want to go check that. Yeah, I'll check it. Yeah. And then the armorer hands the weapon to the actor, showing them also a visual inspection that, there's no ammo, no live rounds, or whatever the case may be. If there's blanks, shows them the blanks, explains the whole situation to them. And then the armorer hands that weapon to the actor. So that protocol ensures that if you have an armorer who's not doing their job, that first AD is going to check it before it goes anywhere else. Now, if they're both not doing their job, hopefully the actor will be the final, line of defense to check that out. I am unclear, honestly, about the liability of an actor being handed a weapon if they're told it's safe. I don't know if they're ultimately liable if it's not. However, I know for myself, I have the opportunity when that first AD says, hey, you can come check it. I also have the opportunity when the armorer hands me the weapon the armorer should be showing me, visually that it's clear. But if they're not doing that job, I can do that I can ask to have it shown to me.
So people don't get bent out of shape when you take, because look, when you take time on a set, you're also spending money.
Yeah, people do get bent out of shape, and unfortunately, it has happened where people want to rush through the process. And, when it comes to weapons or when it comes to any kind of safety procedure, that's where you have to, be, just hold your integrity and hold, be able to say, hey, no, I don't feel safe. I want to take the time to go through this.
Let me ask you a question, because Hollywood loves to shoot a lot of weapons, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm in a scene, again, because I know basic weapon safety, like, right, I'm not going to, I know what it takes to keep someone safe, and that's by following the basic rules. So if you're going to hand me, some kind of fancy, weapon that is automatic or semi-automatic, and I'm going to shoot a magazine or two, I'm either going to insist on loading that thing myself, or I'm going to have to watch you. I'm going to have to watch you load it. I'm not going to bet someone's life that there wasn't a mistake, or, God forbid, nefarious intent. I can't bet I wouldn't bet your life on that, Ryan. If you and I had a thing where you and I are going to be shooting, and it doesn't really matter where the rounds go and how accurate we are, this is blanks. I'm going to let you know, hey man, I've checked I loaded this thing myself. I mean, and again, with all the time you have sitting there, you could literally load all the magazines you want. I mean, like, I'm going to load, these are my magazines, mark them as taped, whatever. And say that, because I can't bet someone's life that there wasn't a mistake, because I didn't see someone do it myself. And if you wanted to double check, hey, let's go to your trailer tonight and let's load magazines for tomorrow's shoot, I would rather do that, where you watch me, I'll watch you, we'll do this and make sure that it's safe, and then show it to the armor or invite whatever, right? Because again, that the element is to not shoot anybody.
Definitely the element is to not shoot anybody. In terms of someone else other than the armor handling a weapon, usually that's not the way it's done. The armor is the one who handles all the weapons, and the only time it gets passed off is when it's being used on set for that day, either in rehearsal or during a take. And again, that's after all of the safety measures I had discussed, have gone through. But
right.
Yeah.
And of course the armor is, look, they're either in their own union or they're part of some guild that covers prop people or whatever, and they're actually a professional at their job. This isn't just your buddy Dave who goes shooting with his dad,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Dave can't
Exactly.
shoot, but yeah. Yeah. Okay. Here's the other thing that just does not make any sense to me. If I pull my weapon out, anything I pointed at, I intend to possibly kill it. Right. And so I'm not going to point my weapon at something that I'm not prepared to kill. How does someone get in front? I mean, if you and I've look, it happens, right? I've been in military training where the instructor turns around and that gun in front of it, you're like, hey,
Yeah.
right. We're all sitting here, and they're like, sorry, God, I absent-minded. Even if we know the weapon isn't loaded, right? It's bad. It's only bad form. It's going to get immediate correction on that. So, how the hell is someone in front of a cold weapon, a live weapon, any weapon? How are they in the shot in a way, or maybe they weren't in the shot? How are they in front of that? In this case, how does Alec Baldwin have his weapon pointed at something that he doesn't want to kill?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's slightly different in terms of filmmaking because, in filmmaking, we're pointing weapons at other actors and other things off. That is the story we're telling in that moment. So in those cases, and in only those cases, really, yes, you are pointing a weapon at somebody else's face or somebody else's chest or something for the scene. Now, when you're not doing it for the scene or for the take or for the rehearsal, then absolutely the same protocols apply like you're talking about. You never have the muzzle pointed at someone or something that could be damaged. Keep it on the ground, keep it away, and keep your finger off the trigger as well. Yeah, so that's just something that I agree is a similar protocol on set. Now, once you get to the point where, okay, now I'm doing a take and I am pointing my weapon at the camera or just off camera or at another actor, by that time, we should have already gone through all of the safety checks that we had talked about earlier, So then it is acceptable to point a weapon at, another actor because that's the scene. That's what we're doing,
And we've seen, or pointing it at yourself. I mean, deer hunter.
Sure. Yeah. Deer hunter.
Yeah, right. Crazy, right? And someone's playing Russian roulette. Well, let's make sure that there's no rounds in that thing because I need, was it Willem Dafoe? Was that guy? I don't know. Anyhow, I need those guys around. Rookie actor walks on set. Yeah, go ahead.
So back to your question though, how did this end up like this? I think it comes down to obviously number one, like I said, protocols were not taking place, right? Those checks and balances of having 3 different people inspect the weapon before the trigger was ever pulled clearly didn't happen, right? Before even that, there shouldn't have been any live ammo in that weapon to begin with or on the set. So that already big issue. But I think what it comes down to is assumptions and kind of not having the right habits in place. I've worked on sets where we had those Nerf guns, right? And they're painted over and they look completely fake, real up close. On camera, they look great, right? They look real and they look dangerous. But up close, you're carrying a piece of plastic in your hand. You feel silly treating it like a real weapon, and but yet you still don't want to point it at somebody unless you're doing it in the scene. And the reason why is not because you're being overly cautious or overly protective. That may be part of it, but for me, it's you're building a habit. If I'm holding a weapon in my hand and I treat it like a real weapon, then when I am actually handed a real weapon, I will also treat that like a real weapon. Now, if somebody hands me a Nerf gun on set and I treat it like a toy and I'm like, blah, 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 and careless and, then when somebody hands me a real weapon that can fire, but they say that it's a prop and it's cold and it's not going to fire, and I treat it like a toy, well, I've, obviously that's where the problem arises. If I treat it like a real weapon, then I'm building that habit of, I'm going to check my gun every time, or I'm going to have the armorer show me how to check, the armorer is the one who should be showing you the gun and showing you that it's empty. And I am now, as the actor holding that gun, and I am not pointing it at anybody. I'm treating it like a real thing, and that continues that habit of safety.
Yeah. We've actually exchanged a weapon for a movie ourselves, and each
Yeah,
time, it's like you handed it to me. It was wrapped up in a blanket, and I didn't
right,
want to pull it out in public, so I carried the
sure,
entire blanket to my truck. And then, I knew the action was open when I had grabbed it. The action was
right,
open, and I knew and I was able to clear it. Right, we did that, and same thing the other way. And I also showed you how the weapon basically it's a shotgun. It's simple, but I
yeah,
showed you how the thing operated because, again, we both know I didn't put any rounds in there, but you don't
right,
know, right? Until you know. Let me ask you this policy of not waving around your Nerf gun and all that kind of stuff.
sure.
Is that the norm? Or are there people that are jokesters out there who like, this is a toy gun, who cares? Lighten up a little bit.
Uh, it should be the norm, and it is standard on sets that you don't point it at somebody unless that's the scene.
Yeah.
But yes, of course there are people who are take it less seriously and aim it at folks, and there's times where you're doing publicity photos as well, and you're pointing guns at each other in the photo, and that's kind of a blurred line because it's part of the show. It's this is part of the acting. Um, but yeah, usually if someone is doing their job as an armorer, they will correct that behavior on set.
And so they're there watching the scene. Then they're not like back in the arms room fiddling with something else.
Yeah, anytime a weapon is on set, the armorer is also on set, and the first AD is also, like I said earlier, in charge of the overall set safety. So they can also pull an actor aside and say, "Hey, don't wave that gun around at anybody. Keep it on the ground until we do the scene." Like that's completely within their line of disciplinary, to be able to do that.
And then if I don't want to blame the decedent, right? Someone died and it's terrible. But how much culpability do they have for not making sure that weapon that was up, going to be pointed in their general direction, even if it was his practice or whatever? How
Yeah.
much culpability does that person, and then the director who ends up getting shot too, how
Right.
much do they own that for themselves? In essence, under Pete's rule, which I'm not sure is fair, but they bet their lives that gun wasn't loaded, and they lost.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. In terms of legal culpability or in terms of set protocol, like
Right.
yeah, they may not be liable in that way. And yes, of course, no disrespect to either of those individuals. But if I were in that situation and had a gun, and it is a real weapon, everybody knew. Well, I'm assuming everybody knew it was a real weapon.
Yeah.
They obviously didn't assume that there was live ammo in there,
Right.
but either way, yeah, I would, in that moment where, hey, before we do this, let's check this real quick.
Yeah.
If I'm anywhere near that weapon, I want to be part of that meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a new kid, new on the set, it's your first thing, and you don't know the first thing about guns. You grew up in New York City, you
Right.
never even touched a gun. You've never even seen a gun until today.
Yeah.
How do they get up that hill to know what to do, even if they're not the one having the gun pointed at them? If they're freaked, because a lot of people are just freaked out by guns, they're just terrified of them, right? How do you deal with that on set? Like, how does someone mentor that kid? Does anybody is it embarrassing to say, hey, I don't know the first thing about weapons? How does that work?
That's a really great question. And I think that's kind of the heart of the issue of what we're talking about here, especially with me as an indie, starting out doing a lot of indie films. It's like, you have to protect yourself and you have to protect the people around you, and you got to, pardon the expression, stick to your guns. You got to. So, I started out not knowing a lot about weapons. I didn't grow up shooting a lot of weapons. It's not a recreational activity that I do often. So when I think the advice I would give to somebody starting out on, an indie set or a professional set, if there's an armorer on set, which there should be, you are an actor who is eventually going to be handling a prop weapon.
Yeah.
I would talk to them and I would say, hey, I'm not very familiar with guns. Can you show me the weapons that I'm going to be interacting with and the weapons that are going to be around me in these scenes. I just want to see how they work, what they can do, what they can't do. Because it's a very different conversation when you have real weapons with live ammo. It's a different conversation, real weapons with blank ammo. It's a different conversation with replicas that can't fire at all. But again, we should treat them all as, real and with respect. But I would have the armor explain that to you. And if there's not an armor on set, if you're doing a really, low budget indie production, and whoever's in charge of the weapons, whoever has that responsibility, have them run you through it. Show them how the ammo is loaded. Show how the cartridge is loaded. Have them show you how to check the chamber, how to check the barrel. Like, just be more familiar. The more familiar that you are with a weapon, and how to keep it safe, what it can do and what it can't do, the more knowledge you have, the less fear you have about it, and the less anxiety you'll have about it, which also leads to issues. And then I would just say, if there's someone there that is not there to explain it to you, and you don't feel comfortable, don't handle that weapon or until somebody has really thoroughly gone over it with you, or you've done your research enough to be able to feel confident and safe. And that's sometimes a hard thing. People push for speed, and they push you to, some young actors may feel like they have to be qualified in weapons before they don't want to look stupid or look like
Right.
they don't have the skills, going into this role. But when it comes to safety, I think people are hopefully a little more receptive to those concerns. Say, hey, and the key word is just be very clear. Look people in the eye, say, I don't feel safe with this scenario. I would like to know more about XYZ so that you can feel safe. Just very clearly stop. Hey, let's take a time out real quick. I'm sorry that we're going to stop, but I don't feel safe in this situation. Please explain this to me. And that's it. That's as clear as I think you can get. And you got to do it.
Yeah, you do. It's such a hard and horrible thing to have happen. Alec Baldwin is a seasoned actor. He's led multi-million, tens of million movies as like the main guy whose name is up top.
Yeah.
He held a gun and shot a dude in Hunt for Red October.
Right.
Great movie.
Great movie.
Completely real. Kieran, it didn't look like, like they never showed, this is an old reference, but they never showed Sam from Cheers pitching because what's his name? Was the actor who played Sam?
Ted Danson.
Ted Danson can't throw a ball. He's like, okay, never show him throwing a ball, right? And so that's not the case with Alec Baldwin. I mean, he's held a weapon in movies, so we know. And look, this isn't meant to be a political statement, but it's fair to say he could be a loudmouth jerk about things, and he has been about weapons. If this was somebody who wasn't a bit of a loudmouth jerk, right? Like Baldwin can be, if they haven't had this extreme, Alec Baldwin has also said he was going to leave the country if Donald Trump or if George Bush got, and he never did, right? So when I say loudmouth jerk, I mean, that's the kind of stuff, like you say stuff and we're like, man, whatever. That's Alec Baldwin. It's funny. He's entertaining. I love the guy. I think he's awesome. But if he had been a little more mild-mannered, throughout his career, if this was, I don't know, let's pick somebody. Gosh, any major actor, Harrison Ford. If Harrison Ford had accidentally shot someone, would we be as hard on Harrison Ford or Nicole Kidman or Meryl Streep?
I mean, bottom line is, someone died and someone got hurt. And so I think we'd be hard on the situation, regardless of who pulled the trigger. Of course, there's conversations around what you're talking about. Somebody is outspoken about weapons, and then lo and behold, they're the one who is this high profile person in the culture, in the zeitgeist. And now they've accidentally, discharged a weapon and it caused someone's life. That's very serious. So sure, there's conversations to be had about it, but I don't think it really reaches the fundamental core of the safety issue, Yeah,
I can appreciate that. And I do wonder about, like, would this even be newsworthy if it was, oh, I don't know. We talked about Michael Gaston the other day, who plays
Yeah.
he's been in all kinds of movies, right? If this had been Michael Gaston, who plays, he's a role player, right? But
Right.
he's played roles with every major actor in Hollywood for
Yeah.
every
Yeah. Yeah.
director, right? So I'm in no way diminishing that, but most people don't know who he is. We do because he's from our hometown. If it had
Yep.
been him, I don't think this would be a major story. I think it's in part because of Alec Baldwin.
I think so too, and I think that I'm sure there's been accidents before on lesser known sets, on independent sets.
Yeah.
But people are comparing this to, Brandon Lee because that's the last time a major Hollywood film or a major Hollywood name
Right.
has had this similar kind of incident. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think but I think if any, even a lesser named actor on a studio production, I think we'd hear about it for sure. It doesn't matter if it's Alec Baldwin, Harrison Ford, or Michael Gaston. If it was Michael Gaston on the same movie, I think we'd hear about it. If it was an indie film that wasn't backed by a studio and it was took place off somewhere, it might be local news, but it might not be national news. I don't know. But yeah,
I'm trying to think of a crafty way to do this because I don't want to put you on the spot. So I'll say this way. Pete says that if I was DA in that county, I would be filing charges of at least negligent homicide, right? Practically, maybe you go for murder too or something, but I think you have to go for negligent homicide, aka manslaughter, the bad kind, not manslaughter, the good kind, because this was completely preventable, right?
Right.
And maybe not just Alec Baldwin gets charges thrown on him. Maybe there's someone else in the chain. You do an investigation, but ultimately, the guy that killed someone that day was Alec Baldwin. I mean, that's just a fact.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I, as DA, wouldn't be able to look my fellow citizens in the eye. I wouldn't be able to look at the families of the decedent and the director in the eye and say that I had done my job if I didn't put him through legal process to be accountable for what he did. Is that a crazy position?
It's not a crazy position, and I'm not any kind of legal expertise.
Right, of course.
But I would say this: there are certain things that people are experts in and are certified in, like a licensed armorer. And there are reasons for them being on set. Now, an actor, if they're handling a weapon on set, is not required to get any kind of extra certification or any extra licensing or any extra. They don't even have to take a test. It's just, you're an actor on set. Somebody who is licensed and certified says, "Hey, this is safe to use." I say, "Okay, thank you. I'm going to use it now." Now, me, Ryan, I'm going to check it, or I'm going to have them check it in front of me, and that's normally what happens anyways. Is an armorer checks it in front of you. But should it fall legally onto him? I don't know. It's a blurry line because, again, it's like, if, let's say the same situation, not a weapon, but let's say a stunt, right? A stunt person does some sort of rigging, and let's say I'm the actor and I'm supposed to do this stunt because it's not something a stunt person, for whatever reason, they're not doing it. They're seeing my face full on and they're setting up the stunt for the actor to do. And they've rigged this thing, and now the rig goes sideways and it hurts somebody else. Am I to blame? No, I'm not the expert rigger. I'm not the expert stunt person who set the whole thing up. That's their expertise. Did I, pull the cord that caused somebody to, yeah, but was it me who set it up? So that's kind of, it's like that weird. Now, again, bottom line, somebody hands you a weapon that hasn't been checked, like, you got to check that. Or you have, again, the armorer check it in front of you. That is, if I'm ever pulling a trigger on set, I'm definitely having that had checked beforehand with me seeing it. But am I ultimately, liable because someone else was supposed to be responsible for that before it got to me? I don't know.
Owen Hart fell to his death, WWE, during a match. It's like, let's say 20 years ago, something like that. I don't recall exactly the date, but the backup latches, that whole, because you're in a harness, right? And he's being lowered down from the arena ceiling, and the latches fail. And
Yeah.
then again, there was probably either someone didn't, or there was a problem with the safety latches that go behind them. And I mean, look, if nothing else, there's a civil lawsuit there, right? Because Owen Hart shouldn't be dead. And you're right, it's not his job. If you're going to do a fall into an airbag, you look at the airbag and be like, I can see the airbag. This should work. You know, you get your little class on how to fall if you've never had one, all of those things. But this just is, it's one thing, like if you take I'm going to take a 4-story fall into a bag and then something goes wrong along the way. Maybe you jump improperly, whatever. This just is so preventable,
Preventable. This thing, yeah, I mean, like I said, it was, you had one level of defense, the armorer, right?
Right.
Then you have the next level of defense is the first AD, the assistant director. Yeah. And then the final level of defense is the armorer's interaction with the actor and the actor seeing that weapon. Now, something that is interesting is that Alec Baldwin, maybe not liable as an actor, but as a producer on the film, he may come down to some legal action because,
for sure, yeah.
From what I've heard, there were safety concerns specifically about the weapons that were voiced from different crew members. So if that had gotten to his production company and gotten to him, and he knew about it ahead of time, then he may be liable for this issue because of, safety concerns were addressed to him as a producer. So that becomes an interesting question.
It's interesting because you can be a producer on a movie and like have not even an earthly clue of what's going on in set, because you're just not that kind of producer. And maybe Alec Baldwin,
very vague term, very vague, very broad term, producer.
I wasn't
a lot of different things.
I had nothing to do with it, It's and Alec Baldwin maybe was in actor mode, and look, he's a very good actor. He's got a process. And so maybe his producer hat isn't on, but surely he's aware, because he's there, that people are walking off the set because of problems. And if any of it has anything to do with gun safety, again, shame on Alec.
Yeah.
Whew, it's a hard thing, man. Let me ask you this. There are, between Brandon Lee and this tragedy here, thousands of movies have been made. And to my knowledge, there are no deaths from a gun discharge going off. There are other things, right? Is it just going to happen every now and then, no matter how safe we make it, because you are taking something that can be dangerous and you mix people and can be dangerous together, and sometimes someone's going to do something?
Yeah, I look at everything on a statistical kind of situation. Yeah. And, the higher the number, the more probability that something is going to happen. And that's just simple facts. And it clearly has happened. So, it's not wrong. However, what we were talking about is that for something like this, it's extremely rare for live ammunition to be on a set. And especially if it's not being used in the film, which is sometimes you do want live ammunition on set for a particular shot. Maybe you want to see the bullet come out of the muzzle with slow motion, or maybe you need to see the action of what the bullet does to the thing all in one shot. But it's very rare that live ammo is used on set. So you take that out of the equation, and suddenly you eliminate the possibility of live ammunition on set. Now, again, will it happen? Yeah, it might happen. Then the next level is like, okay, let's have those chains of command, those chains of custody of the weapon going through and being checked. If all that's done, accident, preventable. Yeah. So I think that it is, I hesitate to say the phrase like it's just going to happen, because it's so preventable, as we talked about. And this is such an extremely rare situation where not just one thing went wrong, but multiple things went wrong. So it's not just like you could potentially have live ammo on set and still nobody gets hurt. You could potentially have live ammo used in the weapons that are used for the filming and still no one gets hurt. No. There's multiple things that went wrong in this situation. So I think it's extremely unlikely, but will it happen? It might. Obviously, it clearly has,
Yeah. And then the other incident I can think of is on the the set of I want to say the word Twilight. That's not Twilight Zone. That's what it was. Twilight Zone.
Mm-hmm.
A guy named he was like a very big, well-known actor. A guy named Vic Morrow had two Vietnamese kids in his arms, and he's carrying him. They're doing this scene in Vietnam, right? Like that's the scene is Vietnam, and literally the on-set helicopter that's part of the shot crashes, and then the blade just reaps the three of them. Yeah, and so there were instant changes, obviously lawsuits, and one of the things was kids can't work after a certain hour. You know, like they just made a hard rule, like little babies shouldn't be on sets at midnight or whatever. And they needed it dark for the shot. You know, that may not have saved those kids' lives. They maybe just do something else, but there were some instant changes. When Brandon Lee gets shot, there are instant changes to make the probability of that happening, you know, harder. Stunt, I think, look, all the different gags and stuff that they do in the stuntman world, stunt person world, you know, they've gotten exponentially safer over the last few years. It's the last 20 years, especially. So it's getting safer as an industry. What if you're running SAG, right? If you're the main actor at SAG, what's your memo today? Well, what are you saying? What are you changing? What are you going to the studios to go work with? Because I mean, that's the big question, right? This is preventable. Well, let's make it more preventable.
Man. It's a tough call because I feel like when you have professionals doing their job, then it's all preventable. There's a big call, I think, right now. You know, I've heard remove all real weapons from sets, and I think to me that's extreme. And I'm not a big fan. I don't own a weapon. I'm not like I said. I've shot weapons for fun, you know, at the range, and that's all well and good, but it's not my main jam. And yet I still don't think they should be completely banned on sets. I don't think that's the thing that's going to save lives. You know, I think it's making sure that those safety protocols are followed and that people are aware, and educating actors, like we talked about today. If you're an indie actor and you don't feel safe, say, hey, time out. I don't feel safe with this. Please explain this. Walk me through this so I can feel safe about it. And that can be for any person on set. But even before it gets to that point, if you have an armorer doing their job and a first AD doing their job, it's never going to get there, you know?
Right.
So I think it's about just making sure that the protocols that are already in place, because I think the armor protocols are the ones that are professional and doing their job are very safe on set, you know?
And that is the norm. I mean,
yeah,
sure. Tom Cruise breaks his ankle doing a stunt, but he also flew a helicopter around like a maniac. And you know,
he's choosing to put himself in those situations.
Right.
Tom Cruise, you know, yeah.
So there are opportunities for, I mean, when he does, so I don't know if anybody, this is a great story, and I'm going to tell the story because this is how complex a movie scene can be. So Tom Cruise is doing the last Mission Impossible movie, and there's this stunt where he falls from like the helicopter rigging, and it's like he's fallen, and then he catches himself, right? Well, in real life, in actual life, when he falls, it's rigged up so he's not going to fall. Like you want to see the fall, but then there's an arresting of that fall. But he's literally hanging from a helicopter because Tom Cruise is crazy and intense. I don't know if everybody knows this, but a lot of the crew had no idea that this was going to be that shot because there's other shots that set that up and they're getting angles and everything, right? And so most of the crew doesn't realize that this is the take when they're going to do the stunt.
Whoa.
I'm going to say it's one of the way. Everybody thinks in the crew that this is going to be Tom hanging from like the side of the helicopter, right? It's not going to be.
Yeah.
And then he falls. And everybody's like, oh my God. They should have had the camera turned around and checking all the crew out because they just thought the boss died. You know?
Right. Wow.
Yeah. It's a great
clear communication. That's you know, that, and you know, obviously nothing happened bad in that situation, but clear communication of, hey guys, this is the take we're going for where we actually pull the stunt off. This is it. Everybody ready? All right.
This is why they don't always, it's not really a thing anymore. That's why like they always show like the director, all right, everybody, take one. You know, like that
Yeah.
stuff's communicated out in a loud way with those kind of things. So everybody knows this is the shot. This is what we're going for. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So a two-part question. Same thing as before with, okay. So you're not Fran Drescher. You're not the president of SAG. What does Ryan do differently on the set for himself? And what does he do differently for either just the set in general and maybe baby actors, not actual babies, everybody, but younger actors or inexperienced actors? What do you do differently now that someone's died on a set? And by the way, Ryan just got back from shooting a movie in the desert with guns. So like,
and nobody got hurt. And we followed all the safety protocols, and we and they were real weapons, but we were safe. Not to boast or anything, not at all. Just
it's a fact.
Going forward, because it's on everybody's mind right now, in terms of this industry and even the public awareness, I think there's definitely, hopefully, like I said, people are more receptive to safety concerns. And so for me going forward, if there's ever a situation where I'm unsafe, I'm just going to, again, pull up that pause, stop, take a moment. I don't feel safe. I will also just continue my habit of treating every prop weapon as a real weapon. And I might have said this earlier, but the term prop is being used a lot in the media right now. And people think that a prop gun isn't a real gun. And I think I said that, but I want to just make that clear that a prop is any object that an actor handles on scene in the set. So whether it's a replica weapon or a real functional weapon, it's still called a prop. So just to be clear. So going forward, anybody hands me a prop weapon, I'm going to make sure the protocols were followed before it gets to me. And if it isn't, I'm going to go back, and now I have, a little more courage to speak up and say, hey, we got to make sure we're following these safety protocols. If I'm a producer on set, even more so, my name's on the line. If I'm a producer that's hands-on and, in charge of, or if I'm in first AD again, if I ever, find myself in that position again, I'm absolutely going to be firm about safety meetings up front, explaining the safety of any weapon that's used to everybody on set so they understand what's going on, and making sure there's clear communication and clear safety protocols going forward. And if you are also, I think the best thing for myself and for anybody going forward is to educate themselves on the safety protocols before they get to set. If you're going to be handling a weapon on an upcoming movie and you're excited about it, brush up on what are the safety protocols so that you know what they are, so that if you get to set, you can recognize whether they're being followed or not. Because a lot of folks, they're going to arrive to set, they've got so many other things on their mind that they're trying to do. And they're not expected necessarily to know the safety protocols, definitely not to the degree that the armorer does.
Right.
But I would say, especially in light of this going forward, educate yourself, take it upon yourself to know all the safety protocols, be more familiar with weapons and how they work. And especially if you're going to be handling one,
Yeah. Fair enough. It's just, the whole thing is terrible and you wish for a different outcome, but you're right. How you move forward is what matters. And I know in the military side, we do dangerous stuff all the time. And there's like a force field or a bubble that you have to sometimes break through, and you go, hey, I don't feel safe. And then whoever the boss is of that mission, they're supposed to say, all right, let's figure this out right now. Let's slow down and stop. Right. Like anybody can stop the line. Beep, stop. Everything stops. What do we need to work on? And look, you can't be like, Captain Carl safety man and not allow anything to happen. But if you raise a legitimate concern, or, and it's more military, but there must be a movie parallel. Okay, we're going to go out. We have these 5 safety measures that keep us safe, right? And we don't have one of them because it's technology based and it just isn't there. Right. I intend to go out because I'm the commander. It's on me to go do this because our mission comes first. Safety is second. So we are going to go. I've had that. I've been in the room and that conversation's happened. Like
Yeah.
this is a safety concern. It's not ideal. Like here's safety concerns in the military. We're going to do a night movement. We're going to drive our vehicles from A to B in the middle of the night, and not everybody's had 8 hours sleep ahead of time. That is an elevated level of risk, and you brief the risk. This is the risk. Here's what we've done to mitigate it. All of the drivers have slept, and they all had the afternoon off. They've all taken naps. Everybody's good. And so you talk about the risky things. You do risky things in movies all the time. I mean, people jump off of stuff. They get hurtled across the sky in a cannon or whatever. I mean, you have to mitigate risk, because you have to do the job. But taking away guns, I don't think is the answer.
I don't think that's the answer either. Yeah. I mean, we're, again, like I said, I wish that we lived in a world that we didn't use guns. I really do. But I'm an actor in the 21st century, and a lot of scenes involve conflict, and conflict right now involves guns. That's the ultimate kind of single person weapon that is used in today's world, unfortunately. But something that is similar to what you do, I think, is when you're acting on a set, you're doing something that has never been done before. In every situation, it's a new thing. If you're working in an office building, you're going to the same office every day. You're walking through the same doors, you're walking down the same hallway, you're sitting at the same desk. When you're doing a military operation or when you're doing an acting scene, you're doing something in a place that is new. You're creating something new in that situation. And even if you rehearse the blocking, if you rehearse the movements, you rehearse the scene, there's still going to be elements that you are not going to factor in until you're actually on the actual set that you're shooting on. You're holding the actual prop you're working with. And so in that terms, I would just stress, like, always walk through the actions in the real space, in the real time, if you can, especially if it's a safety concern. If you're walking on hazardous terrain, if you're walking on, even if you're rounding a corner, like, just kind of walk through it, because you're doing so many things that you've never done before in that situation. There's bound to be something that's going to come up that you didn't anticipate until you actually walk through the space. Now, for military operations, like, same thing, right? You prepare and you test out those things, but until you go to the actual field, it's not the real thing, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Can we role play for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, you ready? This is your phone I'm calling. It's calling you right now.
Yep.
Hey, Ryan, baby, it's your agent. Hey, listen, I got a great job, and I got to know right now, yes or no. You're going to play Alec Baldwin in the documentary about the movie Rust.
You got to know right now, huh?
That's right now. They want to know. They're looking at Billy Baldwin, and you're up against him. I got to beat him to the punch.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Man. Wow, you stumped me, man. I want to think about this. That's a lot to ride on,
All right. It's scene.
Sorry I didn't have a quick, man, you really got me, because, like, of course I want to take the role. It's a documentary. It's about, it's not the actual situation, but man, there's some things that you don't want to, like, not to say that it would start my career, but it would definitely be a higher profile situation that would open up. And, you don't want the first thing to be, to be something that touchy necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and look, I don't want to make light of it, the role playing part, but those things happen. Like, someone is going to be next in the shoot. Someone is going to play that role at some point. Someone is, these things are going to get these, you guys tell stories for a living. And so it's I knew it was a question that no one else is really going to ask. And it was fun to role play because, it's just fun.
And you really stuck. I was really like, wow, imagine this is a real offer. What do you do? And I'm like, my only hesitation was because of how tragic and how hot the situation is, that I don't know if I want to, be known for that. But
right. It's a thing. It's a thing. Well, listen, you've been a champ with all these questions. I try not to put you on the spot for anything you don't need to be put on the spot for, but you still just rolled with everything. And, you guys take secure. This is the thing. Everybody, Hollywood as an industry takes safety seriously. You know,
Yeah.
they do things, like you were saying a minute ago. You guys do you think of like, what is the most impossible thing we can do here? Like when you see in the 30s when they would do flying carpet gags in movies, there's actually people 4 stories up on a fucking carpet.
Right, right.
Wow. And then you watch it on the TV and you're like, what in the hell? First off, how the hell did they pull that off? Second, nobody died. You know, I mean, it's incredible. Right. So,
or Charlie Chaplin, I think of that famous, like where the facade falls on him and he's in the door frame, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy, wild stuff, you know?
Yeah. Evel Knievel,
his
mechanic, they would tune the bike by ear. By the way, this is not a bike that's meant to fly over 80 feet in the air. And this is like a hard bike. It weighs a shit ton of weight. And, you know, that's how they did it. And so Hollywood is way safer than it used to be. Show business is in general way safer. And so we want to make sure we set all this up with that. Like Hollywood cares about safety and security. You know, there's times when things slip through the cracks. There's times people get lax, but I don't want to bang on the whole industry because this is a tragedy, preventable. But so many movies get made and they come off with without any kind of deaths like that.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I don't want to put a stain. I also don't want to put a stain on the industry or think that this tragedy puts a stain on the industry itself. It was, you know, a series of events that all transpired, that were all, you know, things that were mistakes were made across multiple planes for this to happen. And that is rare. It's not something that is common in the industry. But you know, on the flip side, like you said, we're intrigued by the extremes, right? We're humans. We're fascinated by living on the edge, seeing something we haven't seen before, seeing something that's dangerous is exciting. And that's why we watch movies, because we get to see dangerous things, but in the back of our mind, we know they're not really, you know, getting hurt. They're not really in danger. And as performers and as, you know, filmmakers, we want to present that excitement and present that fear and that danger, but do it in a way that is as safe as possible.
Fair enough. All right, man, stand by. Let me run this thing. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching.